The other response that you can count on getting from unbelievers is the so-called Euthyphro dilemma, named after a character in one of Plato's dialogues. It basically goes like this. Is something good because God wills it? Or does God will something because it's good? If you say that something is good because God wills it, then what is good becomes arbitrary. God could have willed that hatred is good, and then we would have been morally obligated to hate one another. And that seems crazy. Some moral values, at least, seem to be necessary. But if you say that God wills something because it is good, then what is good or bad is independent of God. In that case, moral values and duties exist independently of God, which contradicts premise 1. Well, fortunately, we don't need to refute either horn of the Euthyphro dilemma, because the dilemma that it presents is a false dilemma. There's a third alternative, namely, God wills something because He is good. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that God's own nature is the standard of goodness, and His commandments to us are expressions of His nature. In short, our moral duties are determined by the commands of a just and loving God. So, moral values are not independent of God because God's own character defines what is good. God is essentially compassionate, fair, kind, impartial, and so on. So His nature is the moral standard determining good and bad. His commands necessarily reflect His moral nature. Therefore, they are not arbitrary. When the atheist demands, if God were to command child abuse, would we be obligated to abuse our children? He's asking a question like, if there were a square circle, would its area be the square of one of its sides? There is no meaningful answer because what it supposes is logically incoherent. So the Euthyphro dilemma presents us with a false choice, and we shouldn't be tricked by it. The morally good or bad is determined by God's nature, and the morally right or wrong is determined by His will. God wills something because He is good, and something is right because God wills it. This view of morality has been eloquently defended in our day by such eminent philosophers as Robert Adams, William Alston, and Philip Quinn. Yet atheists continue to attack the straw man erected by the Euthyphro dilemma. In the recent Cambridge Companion to Atheism, published in 2007, for example, the article on God and morality, written by a prominent ethicist, refers neither to the work of these scholars nor to the alternative that I've just explained, but it attacks only the view that God arbitrarily made up moral values, a straw man which no one in my acquaintance defends today.